Hi everyone, I am here with a true story. Hi Sharon. Hi Sharon. Thank you. All right, this one is called, or by Bernadette S., and it is called Beating Autism. Wasn't sure whether to read this one or not because my nephew has autism, and a little boy we know, our neighbor's grandson, has autism. But we'll read it and see what it's like. Jacob, our eldest son, was only 3 years old when the words autism, attention deficit disorder, sensory integration disorder, and Asperger's syndrome became commonplace in our home. These diagnoses for Jacob helped explain why he didn't act like other children. He was so sensitive that even wind physically hurt his skin. Often the sound of a lawnmower at the end of our street would send him into a frenzy, and sudden laughter in our home would make him cry. At church, the only way to keep him happy was to be the Sunday school teacher. I knew Jacob would never be normal, but I hoped he would learn how to overcome the challenges he faced. I knew God doesn't make any mistakes, so he didn't make one when he made Jacob. I prayed God would prove himself faithful to Jacob, helping him with every difficult circumstance he faced and giving him God's peace in our loud and busy world. I prayed Jacob would be able to live a normal and productive life, learning how to channel his gifts for God's glory. I wanted Jacob to live certain that God made him with a plan and purpose. Although my husband and I had planned for me to work in a teaching job while we raised our kids, doing so would require sending Jacob to daycare, something I knew he wasn't ready for. So earning money from home was the next best option. Although I went to school to become a teacher, art had always been my first love. Staying home with Jacob jump-started my art career. God blessed the endeavor, providing me not only with many jobs and projects, but also with the ability to be a stay-at-home mom. When it was time for Jacob to go to school, many people counseled me that he would probably need to be in a special program or be homeschooled. But the local school worked with us. Jacob's first grade teacher, knowing that he needed a sense of safety and structure, designed a storybook for him with large pictures of himself in the school with various teachers. Using this, she would tell Jacob to go to the page of the classroom they were currently in, such as his library page, when they were in the library. This helped him with transitions. She also let me work with him and sit with him in the classroom until the other students arrived. That's a really, really good teacher. You can tell she really cares about her students. As his first grade year progressed, my sitting with him eventually turned into standing by the door and then waiting down the hall. Finally, on the last day of the school year, I only walked with him to the front door of the school. It was thrilling to see him overcoming his fears. He wasn't only surviving, but he was also thriving in school. I couldn't wait to share this exciting news with the women in my Moms in Prayer group. They'd all been praying along with me that Jacob would successfully make the necessary transition into public school. We all rejoiced in seeing how God was answering our prayers. Making friends became his next great challenge. Other kids felt uncomfortable around him because he often shook his hands uncontrollably or cried over minor things. I tried to organize play dates with other moms and kids so Jacob could find a friend. It was a struggle for him to feel like he could fit in. His physician told us he would learn to overcome autistic struggles, but his behavioral tendencies wouldn't change. Jacob would always struggle with loud noises, sudden changes, and staying on task. Jacob learned to cope with his sensory issues through a sport he loved, running. I couldn't believe my eyes when the boy who cried because of the wind and the loud lawnmowers positioned himself to run, following a piercing shot from a starting gun. Yes, he was still afraid of the noise, but his determination and faith were his lifelines. And unlike other competitives in team sports, this was something he could really do. It was exciting to see his confidence increase, and with it, his circle of friends. By his senior year of high school, he found it hard to find family time because he always had something to do with others. During this final year of high school, we saw him overcome the social and behavioral obstacles of autism and flourish in school. Jacob had to work extra hard to keep his grades up. He took twice as long to finish assignments, and he would come home after school and sit in the same chair for hours to complete his homework. His diligence to attend to his studies, despite his disabilities, resulted in a grade point average of almost 3.9. After initial hurdles, his disability helped him make good friends. His love and kindness came from his high sensitivity to the people around him. Jacob began to consider becoming a physical therapist. When we took him to look at colleges, the program he wanted to get into was very competitive, demanding, and required 7 years of college education. Yet he was absolutely resolute on his decision. We were concerned about our ability to provide finances. Then we received a phone call telling us that our dear friend Myron had passed away. Myron and her husband Dick, who had passed away a year earlier, never acted as if they had much money, but they had apparently saved diligently. Wanting to be a blessing to our boys, they had left quite an inheritance for our 2 sons. 1 month before Jacob's high school graduation, I found myself handing each son a check, reminding them that God was making a way for them to go to college. Their eyes widened as they looked down at $50,000, and more was coming. Though God has not answered every prayer in my life, God's gifts are always good. He does hear our prayers. The little boy who would not separate from me and could not be around many people at once now has a big heart for people, for life, and for God. He knows that it was God alone who saw him through it all. My entire family, including all those who have prayed with me for Jacob over the years, has learned so much from him about what it means to trust God. We can say wholeheartedly that God has a hope and a future for all who call on him. I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Good night, guys.